And we're live with
Ed Milewski.
Ooh, going last name today. Love it.
Ed Milewski.
Love it.
Okay.
And James, where are you, James? And where is your camera pointing right now?
Well, I'm inside one of the potential studio locations of the future home of Midas Letter America, where we are going to be centered in for the purpose of bringing the opportunity inherent in the emerging U.S. cannabis market to all of our wonderful viewers. And we are essentially going to document visually the emergence of the American cannabis sector into federal deprohibition. We have the participation of celebrities from the Los Angeles entertainment industry. We have professional producers involved. And this is one of the spaces that you can see behind me that we're considering for the home of Midas Letter America, which we expect will go live sometime during Q1 2019. Now, this is not to replace Midas Letter Canada. This is to augment the experience of the Midas Letter Canada, who will then be free to focus on Canadian opportunities, while from the United States, we report on US opportunities, and ultimately look for us to be opening a studio in the UK as that market comes on to maturity.
Yeah, and it's crazy actually, because in the United States you're seeing a massive growth there that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. And we spoke about it yesterday with Ed on the show. Went down to MJ Biz conference, and it's amazing. They are actually, for as far back as they are with for federal laws and all of that, they are miles ahead with packaging, with products. It's America.
It's America. It's the land of the consumer.
So it's going to be really interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about the American market, is while it might appear that they're leaps and bounds ahead by events like MJ Biz, you've got to remember that 95% of what you see at MJ Biz is going to, be seen in the rearview mirror as a broken dust heap of somebody's wishful thinking. And, that's really the essence of the US market relative to the Canadian one, is that, Canada, you can't do things half-cocked as well. And so, the US market's going to have a lot more money brought to bear on it, and it's going to scale a lot quicker than the Canadian one is. But at this point, what are there, 20, maybe 20 US names worth talking about? And most of them trade on Canadian exchanges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you were saying, it's the land of the consumer. I think we're yet to see, we're starting to see these retail chains really take over. I mean, we've been talking a lot with our community about green growth brands. I'm not a client, nor do I own a share at the moment. But I'm really excited about that type of company where these are industry leaders. Like that,
right.
The Hovar family, they have American Eagle, all that kind of stuff. These guys are retailers. They know what they're doing in the retail space.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's just another product now.
Yeah, just to let you know that we will have Peter Horvath on Midas Letter Live on December 13th, and he'll be on the live show in the afternoon of December 13th.
Awesome. I did not know that, and excited to see it. He's a good speaker. I saw him here, I think 2 weeks ago. There was a U.S. conference or something like that, U.S. cannabis conference, and he's got a plan. It'll be interesting to see that go.
Yeah.
What else are you looking at? There's been a story that broke yesterday that is catching a lot of people's attention, and it's actually a relatively serious one about capital markets, specifically with blockchain and cannabis. Have you been reading up on it?
Yeah, I have been. You mean in terms of the collapse of the Bitcoin market?
That too. I'm very surprised about how much it's gone down. But no, this Financial Post article that's going around in the press release from the BC Securities Commission about 11 consultants being not postponed, but pretty much put on pause while they continue the investigation with some pretty crazy allegations against their conduct in public companies that I know all of us have heard of before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very serious.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, as a lesson to public companies, based on that BCSC press release, it underscores our contention that there is a right way to market your company to the investor community through financial communications, and there's the wrong way. If you're issuing free shares to a bunch of guys who are promising they're going to do something for you, and they don't have to lay out any funds for them, then you're inviting this kind of disaster. Just to be clear, that's how not to do it. And so as this story unfolds, and I can assure you, it's going to get a lot uglier and people are going to go to jail. And these companies are going to have a hard time recovering from the negative stigma as a result of this poor decision on the part of former management in most cases. So you'll notice that in a lot of these companies, the CEOs who brought this, this network of, well, let's just call them dubious financial communications people, or at least dubious in the way they achieve revenue. You know, this could be the death knell for the check swap, against which we've always at Midas Letter held the position that a check swap is not a good way to engage a financial communication service provider, because you're creating a situation where the financial communications consultant is incentivized to compete for exit with a share position with a zero cost basis against shareholders of the company who put in legitimate capital. And so that's why, in my view, the check swap is something that should be a thing of the past. And I think that this action by the BC Securities Commission could result in the death of the check swap.
Yeah, and like Ed was saying, it actually is really serious. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the show, as I was a part of a company, I was an investor. And we always teach at TMIG and at Midas Letter, we always teach people, do your due diligence on a company. And as our community was doing more due diligence, and there's a lot of people, there's a huge banding of investors saying, hey, I'm seeing something right now I don't believe in. I want answers, not getting the proper answers, and fighting for what they thought was correct. Because when you're a shareholder, a lot of people don't realize you own a bit of that company. Whether it's 5 shares or whether it's 1 million shares, you own a tiny bit of that company. As long as it has a voting right to that share, you've got a say. And I think this is a story that's going to really, really open up in due time. We got to let the BC Securities Commission do their job, look into it. There's some companies, I think, that got wound up because they didn't have market experience. I think there's some companies that made bad decisions unknowingly, and I think there's possibly some companies that made bad decisions knowingly, and those are the ones we need to watch out for, especially.
It's about, you know, creating a level playing field, and you know, these securities with multiple votes that we see a lot of. I mean, come on, that's no different than a check swap, is it? I mean, it's another attempt to take advantage of rules.
The issue of privately controlled companies accessing public capital and trading on public exchanges is certainly just another example of egregious behavior that is always the byproduct of a market that is in a manic phase where it's captured the imagination of investors everywhere, and it's transforming the investment landscape. It's sucking up all the capital. This thing where companies are giving away shares to consultants for nothing, privately controlled companies trading on public exchanges through these super voting structures. These are all risk to the shareholders who are paying good money and who need to be cognizant of these situations and stay away from both companies that are sort of configured like this in favor of the ones that are constructed in a way to give the retail shareholder a more balanced shot at having a positive experience as an investor.
Yep, and I agree. I think the more, I studied both business, finance, and actually I took security courses in school as well. And it's funny, when you actually start trading though, when you actually start getting into the actual investment world, it's a whole other game. They do not teach that in school. You really do have to be careful, because at the end of the day, a lot of the times the retail investor, you're going upstream the entire way. And that's why communities like this, communities where you get to talk to people, learn about information, it's all about due diligence. The more you know, the more you talk around, hopefully, the better you are at making decisions that make the right, proper sense for your own personal financial needs. that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And my hat's off to you guys at Follow the Money for bringing the egregious behavior of this company to light. That was some fantastic reporting on your guys' part. And as an investor who was basically dissuaded from participating in a couple of these companies as a result of your coverage, I thank you.
Hey, and we appreciate it, right? We're never trying to throw anybody on the bus or anything like that, but there's certain, it came to a point where our community, specifically from one company, BlockPlay, that I was an investor in, you see certain action and it causes you to second guess things. So
yes.
There was a point, the All Shares Matter movement, that was all over Twitter for a long time. We actually had Chris Perry come on here to talk about Midas on the show and talk about certain things with that as well. You've got to really pay attention to these things. And it's like you said, when you have a community that's saying, hey, watch out for these things, no means to say don't buy into a company or anything. That's just be aware of this. And being aware of that, you can make smart decisions. But you know what? I might stick away from this, or I might stick away from that person, or it's the information age. You can't get away with these things like you used to. And I'm glad to see these things coming forward, because the BC Securities Commission, although nothing is set in stone, this is an investigation. You have to be aware of that. But they don't issue releases like this unless they have a probable cause of saying, hey guys, we need to look into this more. You're innocent until proven guilty. That's just the way our system works. But they issued this press release, which is basically saying, we have enough evidence that we need to be mindful of this right now while we sift through this and really find out who's at fault and who got taken advantage of.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, but like James pointed out, when you have a bubble or mania, it invites all kinds of good things but lots of bad things, right? Yeah. So buyer beware. Caveat emptor.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, my good sir, I will let you get back to looking at the expansion to the USA. I love the idea. Looks great behind there, but I think you're looking at a few more. So I appreciate your time. And yeah, I'll keep the seat warm for you. You're coming back soon. This is your seat, but I'll keep it warm for you in the meantime.
Yeah. For now.
You bet. Thanks very much, guys. For now. Great to see you.
Perfect. Well, here's Liz West with the news that's moving markets today. We're going to head over to that now and see what happened this afternoon. We'll head there now.
Thanks. And these were the headlines. Aurora Cannabis announced today that they have completed their first shipment of medical cannabis to the Czech Republic as their international expansion extends to 21 countries. All products will be shipped to Czech Medical Herbs, a Czech pharmaceutical wholesaler who will subsequently supply pharmacies throughout the country. Czech Medical Herbs is a distributor of medicinal products with a specialization in cannabis for medical use and medicinal products based on cannabinoids. Cannabis for medical purposes was regulated in the Czech Republic, a country with approximately 10 million people, in 2013. Battelle, the world's largest nonprofit research and development organization, and Canopy Growth Corporation announced the completion of multiple fully legal cannabis imports from Canada to the United States. Battelle and Canopy Growth will work together to advance knowledge surrounding cannabis in support of medical research and novel product development. The organizations have completed 4 product transfers to Battelle's secure research facilities pursuant to United States Drug Enforcement Agency approvals. Organigram Holdings, Inc. announced it has completed the registration process with Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority, making it an official supplier of cannabis for the province. Organigram now has supply agreements in 9 out of 10 provinces. Product is expected to start shipping to Saskatchewan before the end of 2018. Weed MD Inc. has announced it has exported its cannabis genetics to Israel's PharmaCann. It's a privately held pharma agricultural medical cannabis producer working under the authorization of Israel's Ministry of Health and widely recognized as a pioneer in the worldwide medical cannabis industry. South Korea has become the first country in East Asia to legalize medical cannabis, marking a significant milestone in the global industry and a potential turning point in how the drug is perceived in traditionally conservative societies. The country's National Assembly voted to approve amending the Act on the Management of Narcotic Drugs to pave the way for non-hallucinogenic dosages of medical cannabis prescriptions. To receive medical cannabis, patients would be required to apply to the Korea Orphan Drug Center, a government body established to facilitate patient access to rare medicines in the country. Approval would be granted on a case-by-case basis. Body and Mind Inc. has delivered the first shipments of cannabis-infused beef jerky products to dispensaries in Nevada. Meat snacks in the United States were a $2.8 billion US category for the year ended February 25, 2017. Roughly $1.5 billion US was attributed to beef jerky. Body and Mind beef jerky is available at dispensaries in Nevada, and the flavors are pepper, teriyaki, and sriracha. That's your news today.
And we are back in the studio live. Ed, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Nice to see you again. The meat snack thing is interesting. You know, the beef jerky is. I've never really had beef jerky, but I guess it seems to be everywhere more and more.
Oh, I love this stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's protein. It's
very
not
lean. Very lean in fat, high in protein. Yeah. There's a lot of articles in there that really stood out. South Korea.
Yeah. What about that?
Well, stay tuned. We got Deepak coming on the show.
That's for medical. That's for medical.
That's for medical.
There's no. They're not promoting THC at this point or anything like that.
But the craziest thing about South Korea, though, is that they, just a few weeks ago, maybe months ago now, time's flying really fast this year, but they basically said once Canada's legalized, they were warning their students and their citizens abroad, do not consume cannabis in Canada. It is illegal. Like, they were very adamant on saying that, and then here they are now breaking ground for medical cannabis.
So they're saying
it's amazing.
No consumption, but if you consume it here, they're not breaking the law, but they don't want them to.
They said that. They said do not do it. That's how far they wanted to go. Then you see Canopy going into the United States. Again, I cannot stress how important that is. Seeing a Canadian company make its way into the U.S. With product, but more specifically for cannabis and all of our viewers south of the border, to allow imports of cannabis into the United States. They've been doing that a little bit for research, but do it from an LP? Is that a sign of changing times?
Well,
I won't speculate there, but
changing times for sure. I mean, 10 years ago, if you get caught with marijuana, you go to jail. Now no big deal, right?
Well, Jerry asked, Brandon, what's your exit strategy for ACB? About 6 months ago. And I don't mean that rudely. I had them at $2. It was a great time. I think they're doing an amazing job and will continue to. I've actually been eyeing them for a re-entry in the last little while, but that was my exit strategy a little while ago when I was just really getting away from my cannabis exposure at the time and getting into mining, which unfortunately didn't go the way I planned, but I had a plan and I executed it.
Sometimes you don't have to go to a sector, you just go to cash.
Yeah.
And just sit and wait until, things look. See Tilray going across the stream up a $0.50. Yeah,
they've been doing all right. Not too bad at all, and it's nice to see some of these U.S. names. I'm just going to my coach stream. Nice to see a lot of these U.S. names. Weed is just green. It's nice. Oh, yeah. Actually, it's quite red. I just looked.
Is it red now?
Yeah.
It was just green.
But weed is, I just mean the whole industry.
Right.
But one thing we want to talk about, somebody was, it's a sliding camera. You got to really watch it. You don't know which one to go to. One thing we wanted to talk about was yesterday there was a press release announced. This is what the three of us, James being the third person, we're talking about, and it's that press release by the BC Securities Commission on BridgeMark. So this is going to be a story to really watch and pay attention to. There's a lot going on here.
A lot of implications here.
A lot of implications, a lot of hearsay. And that's not to say that's not true, but we live in a society where you're innocent until proven guilty, so you have to understand this is an investigation, but you do not put press releases out there if it's just a hunch.
It would be imprudent for us, not prudent for us to talk about certain people or because you were sort of on this pretty early though.
So our community, Follow the Money Investor Group, we've got chat rooms that are there, free of charge, of course, for anyone going ftmig.com. You can sign up there. But in those chat rooms, though, we were talking about this months ago because of a certain company called BlockPlay. And I speak of this because this is an investment I had. I actually lost 5 figures from it because I saw what was going on. I went with it. I don't mind risky situations myself. I knew what I was getting myself into. But this company, BridgeMark, that is being called out.
That's not a public company, is it?
No, it's like a fund.
They're the sort of the
brokers, all that kind of stuff.
Right, right.
So according to the press release result that was sent out by the BC Securities Commission yesterday,
right,
and then subsequently the Financial Post has jumped on this, and a bunch of news agencies have jumped on this.
Sure.
Where they have paused or basically taken away the ability for numerous consultants being able to practice at the moment until this is finished. And there were 11 companies implicated in this investigation.
11 public companies.
Public companies. I know there's more than that, but these are the ones that were implicated.
Yes.
And there's quite a few there. You can look at the press release to see it, but I do stress some of these companies, I strongly believe, got into bed or worked with these people and didn't fully realize what they were doing.
Right.
Does that make them innocent? No, you got to do due diligence and this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but I think there's these people.
But they may not have been the perpetrators. In other words, they could have been duped innocently.
Correct.
And I'm not even suggesting there's any wrong. I'm just saying that, obviously, there's something's wrong.
Something is definitely wrong, and
something's rotten in Denmark.
And it's unfortunate, but this all started. You talk around, you start looking at the inner circles. This was an uprising by investors. That's why I think this is going to be a really interesting story, because some investors were watching this unfold, and they're watching trading, and investors are not stupid people. We've got social media. A lot of people are actually very well educated in the retail space, and I think that's a sign of what happened here, is that they saw trading, that it was curious to them. Like, well, why is this happening? They started digging into it more. Really, this is an uprising of investors who banded together. They saw that what was happening in their public company, they didn't believe in. They thought it was wrongdoing. It wasn't in the best interest of shareholders. And what so many shareholders forget, you do have a say in a company. If you have voting shares, you own a bit of that company.
Right.
If you got 50 or 100, okay, you own a very, very small amount.
Sure. But nonetheless, you own a piece of it.
When you have it in numbers, which is what happened here, you can really bring this up. And there's a lot to unfold. There's a lot in the background that's still going on. So let's let that play its course.
But
it's fantastic.
But be aware.
Be aware, because as James was saying, he heard about this and he would search. I think it's Form 9 or 410. Don't quote me on it. It's one of the two, where you can see who got under private placements. And we always teach people in our community, do your due diligence. Don't just blindly go into a company. Who's running the company? Who got onto the private placement? How cheap was the paper that went out? If you're looking and you know that there's 50-cent paper coming out in the next couple of months, and it's at $5 right now, that's a lot of cheap paper that's going to hit the market. And what happens when there's so much selling? The price goes.
Well, look.
Down.
There's buying pressure and selling pressure, and if there's a lot of people with a lot of like a windfall, buying an issue that's already up dramatically. It's going to have selling pressure, because, look, if you bought stock at a nickel and it was trading at $2, you don't have to think.
Yeah.
Especially in this game, it's different. Anyway, to your point.
Yeah. For any of those people who are looking for information, be careful, because like I said, there's some good people and good companies I can almost guarantee are mixed up with this. Sometimes, it's Bay Street and all that. A lot of people are connected in BC as well. But look at the story of BlockPlay. Go check, because it's all out there. It's all news releases, all of that. It really truly is a story of investors standing up to what they thought was a company not being run in the best interest of shareholders, and as such, they came up and I think this is the BCQ. You're probably watching this right now. This is the BC Securities Commission, the people involved and the people they're looking into. And look into that story. You'll see that at the very end, all directors resigned, and now it's a shell, unfortunately. But that, I believe, really helped show that investors can stand up against companies if you think there's wrongdoing. I don't want this to turn into a thing like, with hospitality. The customer's always right. The customer is not always right. In fact, they're almost always, a lot of the times they're wrong. It's just up to you to prove when they're right. So, for all those investors out there, I can guarantee half the people here cannot run a company better than some of these directors do. So don't start thinking, if you see something wrong, you just start screaming up. You have to know more about it. But if you think you see something illegal, or you think you see something completely detrimental, investors do have a say. Invest in communities. Find groups to speak with. Listen to people on Midas Letter, ftmig.com. We've got a lot of people over there as well talking about it. Invest with people. Bounce ideas off one another. And the end goal is to make the best decisions possible for your personal financial needs. So I hope that if this is what they say it is, I hope this investigation goes well. And I hope we stop this, because it's taking advantage from your average Joe, and it's a shame.
Right.
It's a shame.
You know, when you not to play the age card here, but when you've been around as long as I have, you see perpetrations, ruses, scams, and I've seen a lot. You know, in the mining industry, we saw Bre-X, which was mind-boggling in terms of the valuation. Anyway, you get sort of numb to it all, but you know, it happens all the time. Keeps happening, right?
And it does. And you know what's changing, though? You know what's changing? That's why platforms like these, like the ones that we operate on, they're built to inform people. They're built for communication. They're built to bring to light these different elements. That's why I loved, even before coming on Midas Letter, I love what you guys were doing here. I loved seeing Chris Perry over at Equity Guru standing up for investors.
Chris has brought some. Geez, I can't.
Not put it on a silent. Folks, are you watching this?
You know
you watching this? Number one thing. It's like the movies.
I don't understand. I don't know how to shut it off. I don't.
But I love watching these people, and Chris does a fantastic job. And we need people out there. And my whole point for saying this is that we are now in an information age. We have been for a while. But when it comes to investing, there are a lot of people out there. Social media. We see your Form 9s. They all get posted on CDAR. We see all that stuff now. It's a lot harder to get away with this stuff now because people will see it. They'll band together, and hopefully, if there are issues, one, they'll get resolved, and two, people are out there when they're making deals about different companies and all that. I hope they think twice. And you know what? Be fair. Everyone can make money if you've got a good company, you got a good process. Everyone can make money. It doesn't have to be one person makes 98% of it, and then the others fight for the rest of the 2%. So I think social media is really, really changing that, which is fantastic. But we also have to pay attention not just to fundamentals, but also to technical analysis. I see some people already asking, where's Charter Dan? Where's Charter Dan? Well, he's here right now. And we are joined not in studio, but by Skype
I'm
today.
Gonna get rid.
With Charter Man Dan back for another day of going through some TA. How's it going, my man?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, and thanks for coming on. Usually you're used to a different face. Brandon this time opposed to James, but nonetheless we'll go through all the things that is catching or that are catching your attention, and just seeing what the market's doing, what you're excited with.
Yeah, right now this is a week for US MJ stocks to have earnings. We had all the major Canadian LPs fairly recently, and we're getting into the swing of things. We have a solid 10 plus names this week. And after yesterday, we've already got our first 3, and we're having consistent bearish reactions to the USMJ earnings. So it's the kind of scenario with so many companies having their earnings coming up, it makes no sense for bulls to be jumping in right now when we are consistently getting bearish reactions. We had Cura had a bearish reaction, RIV bearish reaction, KSHB bearish reaction. So it's definitely still a bearish sentiment in this market, and we're seeing that reflected on the market's reaction to these earnings.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually, because we were actually talking about that yesterday on the show with Ed about this. Really, it's a hard case to be made to say that this is an investor's market right now. There's a lot of trading going on. You're not seeing any good follow through. You might get like a day and a half, but even yesterday, it looked like it was starting off well, green, and then almost like 15 minutes, 20 minutes in, you started realizing, okay, no, this is changing, and it started pulling back. And you're right. I mean. Cureleaf came out with 21.4 million USD, I think the number was, for their last quarter, which was, that's a good number. That puts them second in the US, and I think that puts them third in all of North America, above Canopy's last quarter as well. So it is interesting seeing that, and then the market clearly didn't respond well to that.
Yeah, it seems that the market got ahead of itself in terms of the euphoria a couple months ago, and now we're seeing that even with some decent earnings, it's still not enough because they were so overpriced in terms of market cap and forward-looking expectations. So we have to sit through these earnings and ride them out. And of course, as always, the general market sentiment of the S&P 500 continues to have a major impact, and it's still shaky ground there. So there's not a whole lot for short-term bulls to get excited about, and patiently waiting until that sentiment does shift.
Yeah, as am I. I mean, I know that you're a trader at heart. I believe I've watched some of your videos. You do invest as well, but trading is where you really like, because you like to have control over your money. And right now, I mean, at one point I had over 25 cannabis companies in my portfolio during the prime of it, and I followed all of them. And I've gone back to having 3, just because right now I'm in 3 that I truly believe are undervalued. But when it comes to going in and out of a few, I'll trade from time to time, but it's really not more than days or weeks at this point. Sometimes days, because you're right. There's no real confidence in the market right now. We're kind of in a limbo effect of legalization's done. It's already passed in Canada, October 17th. And now it's kind of in this awkward phase of show me what you're about. But no one's really at that stage yet for the numbers to justify their market caps. I still think that the likes of Aurora, of Canopy, of Wayland, of Afria, of these larger companies where they have the good foundations, I still think they're great investments. It's just right now, if you're looking at this, you're going to constantly ask yourself, can I get a better price? And there's a pretty high likelihood that if you're an investor for long term, you might be able to still get that.
Yeah, and it's honestly, for those that missed the initial run up or those that have cash, this is an ideal scenario because they're getting another chance. And this is patience paying off for those that were able to wait for things to come back to reasonable valuations. And it is going to take a kick from some kind of catalyst to change that sentiment. And a deal would do it. APHA or ACB getting a deal similar to Canopy or even anywhere near comparable would, spark bulls and say, oh yeah, we still have that potential catalyst for these individual names. But until that happens, it's definitely a patience game that we need to wait for market sentiment to shift for.
Well, absolutely. Why don't we start jumping into some charts and seeing what you've been looking at today and this week?
Sounds great.
All right, Dan, what are we looking at now?
So this is the S&P 500 interlaid over the CGC chart, and this is on the 5-minute time frame. So each candlestick represents 5 minutes going by. And this is actually from yesterday, because if you're familiar with my charting and my analysis, I'm always talking about correlations, and we can get clues on how the correlations and how these two are interacting with each other. And yesterday we saw very clear red flags for the CGC bulls, because once the bell rang, we had a half an hour in a row of the S&P 500, just all bull action. Meanwhile, in the background here, we had CGC with a half an hour in a row of all bearish action. So as soon as we saw that, we can say, okay, there is a negative correlation right now that's favoring the CGC bears. And it's always important to note what the correlation is with the S&P 500, because like I said, we can get clues from that. So in today's example, I actually used this correlation to make a day trade on CGC. This is SPY now on the 5-minute time frame. Here was the open. We saw a bull move. We hit the high of that bull move at 10:10 a.m. and then we consolidated. So I want to compare, what does CGC look like at that same point in time? And here we are. CGC hit the low of the day. The top of the bull move was 10:10 at the exact same time as SPY. And look at the consolidation. We had 25 minutes of this pullback, and compare it to SPY. SPY was pulling back much harder, much more significantly than CGC was. So as soon as I saw this healthy CGC consolidation, and as soon as I saw this SPY pullback, and I could say to myself, all right, SPY is going to set a 5-minute high or low and try and bounce here, I could say to myself, that's a favorable correlation where a SPY bounce is only going to help the CGC bulls. So I made an entry here at 31.90, and my target was potential for a new high of the day, and my stop loss, being it just a short-term day trade, was going to be right down here at the low of consolidation. So I was risking 30 cents from my entry, ended up seeing some very nice follow through, and it ended up being a 2% move with 63 cents to the upside. Unfortunately, I only got 10% fill. I placed a buy order, and I was just a split second late, and the price ran away without me. Rather than chase it, I just sat on my smaller position, still locked in a nice little win after a 15-minute hold, but could have actually been a really nice day maker had I gotten my full fill. So that's just an example of how noting that CGC was holding up a little bit better than SPY was a clue that I used to make that initial entry.
No, that's awesome. It's always interesting seeing a trader at work, especially when you're going off of something like CGC, like Canopy and the S&P 500. We all know that correlation has been really strong. And it's just nice to see your thought process of going into the trade. Obviously, mentioning your stop loss. A lot of people out there who are trading, who are new to it, they don't use that enough. They don't have a mental stop loss, which I think is a mistake. And then also to see that you had a target of being able to get out as well and hopefully be able to scalp a little bit from that trade.
Yeah, I mean, great point about stop losses, and that's something that we preach. Every single trade needs a stop loss, and it's just me trying to, extend what I have learned from my mistakes, because I used to not use stop losses, and one of the biggest, leg ups that my game as a trader got was when I started using stop losses, because I would have, a solid 4 days of the week with all profit, and then I'd have one bad trade and I would give it all back. And when I started using stop losses, I prevented one bad trade from erasing an entire week of strength. So that was definitely an essential as a trader, utilizing stop losses.
No, I agree, especially if you are trading. There's a lot of people out there who, they watch videos like yourself, or they see other people and they're like, you know what, I'm a day trader too. It takes a lot more to be able to do it well, but to have a nice stop loss, that's always a good point, because like you said, you're able to at least preserve your capital, because you can see all the technical points all leading towards it going up. Could everything be going well, and then all of a sudden it takes one piece of news in another market, or just one person just to have a huge sell order go out, and all of a sudden all of your work unfortunately didn't work. And if you didn't have that stop loss, you could be looking at a pretty good loss.
Exactly. Nothing is ever a sure thing. All we know is probabilities and what's most likely to happen, but we always have to prepare for what we don't expect to happen.
Exactly. Well, other than CGC, how's it look today, actually, going into the trading? Is it still mirroring the SPY? Is it working well? What is the outlook for this morning?
CGC is holding up slightly better. We can see right now on SPY, we had a clear 5-minute uptrend that set a lower high and a lower low, and this is actually a bearish reversal head and shoulders pattern that just confirmed right now on some solid bull or bear volume. And we can see that CGC is not following that. CGC still has these 5-minute higher lows. So it's a slight advantage for those CGC bulls. That being said, the daily chart, it's not a big day by any means, but the bulls are just happy to be holding on and not falling further below key support, which for CGC is 30.26. Overall, the MJ sector, both US and Canadian, is pretty red today. It's a pretty rough day, but it's nice to see that we're not seeing the tick-for-tick correlation with this SPY weakness on the 5-minute time frame right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at a bunch of my lists, either the Canadian cannabis or US cannabis, and you're right, there's a lot more red today. It was red yesterday as well, so we're still seeing a pretty healthy pullback in these stocks. And even when they do have a little bit of, a run of some sort, you're really not seeing that follow through the next day for the full day, and you're definitely not seeing it follow through for 2 or 3 days. I think that goes towards your point made earlier that, this really is a trader's world right now, and we really do need something, a deal of some sort of industry-changing event to really get people's confidence back. Because if you're seeing something go up by 8%, a lot of the people who are there, it was traders, and they're taking their profits. You know what? Good on you for doing that. But it does not seem like we're getting a lot of traction in the U.S. or in Canada right now.
Yeah, it's the kind of market that goes 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards in the downtrend.
Well, are you looking at any other companies right now for current trades or potential trades that you're looking to line up for yourself?
I like Cron. Cron has consistently held up better than its peers. When I look at the Canadian MJ space, I'm looking at a major 5 names, which is TLRY, CGC, APHA, ACB, and Cron. And Cron has consistently been holding up better than everybody else, and APHA has consistently been weaker than everybody else. But this is my favorite kind of pattern, which is just a tightening equilibrium where we have our low of the dump, high of the bounce, higher low was established, a lower high, another higher low, a rejection from resistance yesterday by 4 pennies. That's another lower high. And here are the bulls trying to form another higher low. So it's just getting tighter and tighter. The volume drops off in these equilibrium patterns. And then when we finally get a break in one direction or the other, it doesn't matter which direction, we see a volume spike and some solid follow through more often than not. So at this point, 904 and 908 breaking would be a solid bull break. And for the bears, they want to see a break of 770 and 752. So for the rest of the week, we're going to be watching this tightening pattern for a break towards the end of the week. And if we don't break this week, we're certainly going to break first thing next week. You can only get so tight before a snap is imminent.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're not looking for this today per se, but you're watching. Now, if it just broke that 908, would you then place a trade then and look to ride it because you're now breaking out of the pattern? Or are you trying to time it a little bit before breaking so that you can get a little bit more of a return from it?
Well, in this scenario, it would be too far of a bull move to break resistance, meaning the bulls would be too extended. The hourly chart would be overextended if we were just to go straight up and break 908. So that's not the kind of bull break I would want to act on. The ideal scenario for me as a trader would see this tighten up a little bit more, give us another daily higher low, which we just formed potentially at 809, and then another lower high compared to 904, and then a break of that lower high. So the tighter you get, the more follow through you can get, because I imagine, it's a bull who's actually exerting physical activity. And if they have to exert that activity to get all the way up to the resistance and then break it, we're not going to get much follow through. The bulls are going to be tired. Whereas if they're tight and it's nice and rested, and then we get the break on a tighter range, that's when you get more significant follow through.
No, a great point as well. So for any of those out there who are trading, obviously start looking into this and looking into the pattern. That's always something that's nice to see forming, and you never know. Again, though, all it takes is one announcement, and it could fly either direction. It's a high-flying industry. You can do all your due diligence, and all it takes is one piece of news to either help you or completely destroy your trade. Absolutely,
and that's where the stop losses come in.
Exactly, that's where the stop losses come in. Well, what other companies are you looking at? Are you tracking ACB right now? I know they've had quite a pullback over the last few days.
Yeah, I'm tracking all the major names, always CGC as number one, and then watching how everybody is trading in relation to CGC. But here we are. If we break 725 here, the low of today is 726. That's a double bottom at this point. This is the US ticker, I believe. Let's make sure of that. Let's go Canada. So that is Canada. So 725, 726. If that support level breaks, the next support is down at 667. So we're entering an area on a lot of these names where there's just a lack of support because of how hard we ran on the way up. So the harder you run, the less support you build, and the easier it is to pull back. The one good thing that the bulls are liking is the declining bear volume on the weekly time frame. I'm honestly getting ready for monthly charts to start forming some higher lows. With the amount of pullback that we've seen, I think we can get some decent entries unless the S&P 500 falls apart and breaks the low of October. I do believe that these names are going to have some decent entries compared to their support levels they established back in August. So ACB, here's APHA, another one here just to compare it on the monthly time frame to its August support. We're getting close to it, and the amount of range from the low to the high of the bull run to the amount of the pullback, we are looking for the August low supports to hold, and I do like the potential of some, multiple week bull entries. It seems, odd to say as the sentiment is still clearly bearish and we don't have much sign from the bulls at all, but it is an area that I'm keeping a close eye on, and I'll be ready to act on if we do see a quick turnaround.
Well, I always appreciate you taking the time and going through those charts. It's one thing to be looking for fundamentals and what's going on in the market. It's a whole other thing to look at what these companies and their charts are actually saying. So I always appreciate your time, as do our listeners and our viewers. I appreciate it very much.
Glad to be here. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, it's always interesting to listen to Dan and look at his interpretation of what's going on, because I'm pretty sure every technical guy looks at things a little differently. They have they look for setups, they look for clues. So he was talking about ACB, bottom 7.25. Well, we've breached that now. If it can't get above it, I want to see, I'd like to see a candle go back above it.
Yeah. Because
it's in an area that's a little
dicey.
But if it doesn't, then we'll probably go to that 667 that he talked about.
Yeah, it's at 716 right now.
And what was the low?
The low here. One second. I don't have that set up here. One sec here.
I'm gonna put it up here.
Oh, let's pull it. Oh, you got it on your side.
Yeah.
I just have
I'll get it.
The whole portfolio of stocks going back and forth.
AC.
No, I love talking to TA guys, because it's really, really important, especially if you are under the belief, which I think you and I have already established, that this is a trader's world right now. For the most part.
Yeah.
If that's the case, you need to start understanding how traders think and what they're looking for. So if there's signs coming up that's telling them to sell, you got to imagine if that's the type of person who's investing right now, and a lot of them see the same sign, a lot of them are going to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very, when you look at like a 1-year chart here, and if we can get this chart up, this is the Aurora. You got a big distribute. I mean, I'm not saying it's distribution or accumulation, but right now it seems to be distribution because we're at the low end. If we start to breach, if we start to breach, this line is not perfect, but there's definitely a bounce here, and these all have nice candles, and then we got underneath here a bit, but we rallied back into the constellation, and now we've broken this one, and here we are, just over 7. Excuse me, fighting off a bit of a cold. Time will tell. But if I was going to trade this, I would. If I was going in, I'd want to have a stop in, like Dan says, just because you can't assume you're going to be right.
Yeah, and you never know what's happening. So, I usually put mental stops if I'm going to be doing something more so than physical stops.
And you follow them, though.
I follow them.
Most people don't have that discipline.
Only recently, because I've been burned too many times. Actually, funny enough, I did not listen to my mental stop. I actually had a physical stop put in. And I took it out, and hindsight, I should have left it in.
Of course you should have. But yeah, because when you made the decision, it said, okay, this is not going to there. And I've done this a million times. You say, this can't happen, and it does happen. So why, you were wrong then, so why are you going to be right now?
Yeah.
And that's the thinking. If you're wrong, like, hey, put a stop in a number you think can't happen. And if it happens, take your small loss and move on.
Well, I think what people are so worried about, though, is that so many people, it's the FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. And they look at something.
Also hate admitting they're wrong, right? Because the loss crystallizes, hey, I'm an idiot,
It's amazing how many people will look at something and say they did do a stop loss. And it touched the stop loss, we're just below, and then it skyrocketed. Well, next time, they're not going to do that again. Even though the next time, maybe it's the time they should have done it. So it's one of those things, if you make decisions, stick with them, don't look back. Learn from your mistakes, don't look back. We got a question here from Jordan. Do you think Acreage Holdings listing on the CEC, but keeping their stock in USD is kind of a slap in the face for Canadian investors? You've now got to worry about playing Forex and the stock itself.
I'm assuming that this is mainly a company that operates mainly in the United States?
Acreage, yes.
Yeah. So that being the case, I'm sure they're thinking, hey, we want our U.S. investors. I got to assume a lot of the money that came into this was from the U.S. They did not want to have to convert their money into Canadian money. Yeah. So in other words, they wanted the Canadian listing, but they wanted to be able to appeal to Americans. Americans hate converting into Canadian money.
Yeah.
Much more so than Canadians hate converting to U.S. money. I mean, the U.S. still has the big stick, right? Mm-hmm. It's the reserve currency. I don't know if it's a slap face for Canada. I mean, look, Canada got the listing.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the CSE got it's a feather in their cap.
Yeah. See, I don't know how to look at this, to be very honest. It's a good question, Jordan.
Great question.
Because from the one side, if you're on a Canadian exchange, you should be in Canadian dollars. Just if you're in the U.S. Exchange, you should be in U.S. dollars.
Right.
So, but is it a slap in the face? To be very honest, I don't know how frequent that is. I don't see it often.
No,
myself,
it doesn't happen. But I mean, again, if this is a company operating in the U.S., and I'm pretty sure a lot of these last financings that were like Acreage, there's 5 of them that Canaccord was heavily involved in.
Acreage, Trueleaf, Curaleaf.
A lot of
GGB.
money came in from the U.S. to fund these things.
Yeah.
So I can understand why you want to keep it in the currency from where the money comes from.
Yeah, I can understand it. I just don't know if I stand by it. But there's a really interesting thing. Neither of us are part of the CSE. Neither of us are part of these companies. So our opinion only goes so far.
Look. Anyway, food. Good question.
Yeah. Well, in a couple of minutes, though, we are going to head to more of your comments and questions, so please keep them coming through. If you're watching this, put your questions in. We'll answer any of the ones that we can to the best of our ability. But also, we've got a nice little segment that we're going to go to in as well, because everyone's talking about edibles. And a lot of people, you know, you can't just boil the water, you can't make it. I know some people, whether it's got cannabis or not, they should not be by an oven. They can't cook. Well, we've got a company who's doing it for you, and we're going to check into them right now.
They can't. Yeah.
A lot of people depend on cannabis to medicate, and edibles are just a fantastic way of doing that. You can stick it in a cookie, you can stick it in pot pie, you could stick it in your if you really want to. I've been passionate about cooking from a little kid. I always enjoyed cooking for myself, having dinner parties with friends. So cooking with cannabis has just been a natural evolution of that passion. We started to talk about the process. We threw up a website, basically a test project, and it really just evolved from there. We offer a service at the Green Chef where we do private catered events. We do all the preparation at the venue. Sometimes we'll even do a small extraction just to educate the crowd. It's really about the experience. It's almost like a consultation, but it's an in-person consultation while you're having dinner. And people are just amazed at what you can actually do with cannabis. We use these square molds because over time they've proven themselves as the most consistent in terms of, you know, getting everything to the same quantity every single time. There's a number of people we work with who have AIDS, who have cancer, and traditional medications are just not working for them anymore. Cannabis is now becoming very mainstream, and a lot of people are very interested in the reported benefits that they can gain. What we do is we take a patient's cannabis and we extract the cannabis oils, and then we cook with that. We're going to start our sugar boil. So this is a destined amount of sugar and water, which we're going to bring to a boil and let simmer for a specific amount of time. So this is going to be our mixing bowl. It's got some grape flavoring, so we're going to be making grape gummies today. Some citric acid in there. We're going to take our cannabis and just plop it right on the bottom. It's cold, so it transfers easily. It's actually a very sticky product. And we're just going to set this aside and it's ready to go. Over time, we started to learn about lab testing extracts, and through that process allowed us to very effectively and accurately dose every batch that we create. I think that's what the market really requires, is for people to understand the dosages that are effective, and they're used to taking those products. They need to know that the next time they take it, they can get the exact same dosage. What I see in the community that's existed in the gray area has been really just people connecting with their patients. And I think that's what's missing from government. If you just go straight to regulation, to large corporations producing products, you're going to miss that one-to-one element. And I think for edibles, you need more than that. You need more of a personal touch. Access is also really critical. It leaves a lot of needy people in the dark. So I don't think edibles, regulating edibles, even though it requires some safety precautions, I don't think it can happen quick enough.
And we're back
once
again.
A lot of different ways to experience the effects of cannabis.
I think edibles will undoubtedly, I know research says differently in Colorado and Washington, they still see flower being massive. I think that edibles will take over, because if you think of the baby boomer generation, a lot of them, whether you have arthritis, all that, it'll become very well known to consume cannabis for that. Do you think they're going to go out and smoke a pipe or spark a joint?
Yeah.
Or do you think they're going to be like, you know what, I can have this little packet? I think Indiva is doing this. They've got THC infused sugar. So your own coffee or whatever it be, it doesn't have to be a baked good like that. It could be a coffee. Put it into your tea, and now you have a calming effect. You're not on Percocets, or you're not on... I think it's going to be massive, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, question time.
Sneaky one.
Ooh, sneaky question. Midas Letter. Can you get Brandon to talk about TGIF? They have earnings tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Well, you know what, Sneaky One? You can, and they can, because I will. I actually like them. 1933 Industries, they just changed their name. When we were down in Vegas, we spoke about this yesterday a little bit. We had Joe and Josh and some of them from their team get us on a site tour of their new facility. They've got a 63 or 64,000 foot facility being built. It was nice. It was done well. It was about maybe 80% finished or something like that. Their footprint in Planet 13, MedMan, Keef or Reef, one of those two is another dispensary. They had a lot of products. They already have revenue coming in. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them among other U.S. cannabis companies. What I like about them, they don't have this outrageous market cap like some of these U.S. players where you see they'll have great revenue, but they're like 5 billion market cap. I'd have to check. I think they're around 300 million market cap. I could be wrong.
I think you might be a bit high.
I think things have changed since then, so forgive me on the market cap numbers. So I'm going off of just memory. You're going off and actually checking them?
I'm going to try and do it right now.
But Nevada has over 44 million visitors a year. And these tourists, well, what are you going to do when you're going to Vegas? You're going to have fun. And if you can get these edibles, these drinks, these all you never, and the margins you get, I was so surprised. A gram was going for like 20 bucks. $18 US. And you know, good on you. If that's what people are paying in Nevada, go for it. But those are some crazy margins, and if they can really capitalize on that, I think they could be a good investment. So let's see what their revenue's coming up. But just remember, their large facility is not finished yet. I think it goes into production early next year. That's when I think they're going to start showing some really good revenue. So stay tuned for that one, if you can find the market cap, because I'm pretty sure I was wrong by saying that.
You know what? If I was a little more... the market cap, okay, according to this, so it's about 100 million right now.
Oh my goodness, I was so off.
Outstanding number of shares. Outstanding. Okay, you're almost got to. Sorry, I think I got something coming on here. Yeah, 237 million shares. Price is around 40 cents. Do the math, 100 million or so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so clearly I was wrong on the market cap. So
what's the significance of the 1933? What is that?
That was the year Prohibition was.
I heard that. Okay.
Alcohol. So they're commemorating Prohibition of cannabis being finished.
Perfect. Here we go.
KHMFG. Last week, the WHO held their second conference regarding cannabis, and I'm curiously awaiting the results. How do you think a positive WHO ruling will affect the markets? Fantastic question. Markets, I don't even
understand the question. What's
WHO, the World Health Organization?
Okay, I thought you were talking about the band, the Who.
Who? Is that the?
Yeah.
Who? I got some songs stuck in there.
You know, My Generation.
Yeah. They're great.
I went
the Who,
actually.
The Who and Who were fantastic.
But before my 20th birthday, I was in Cobo Hall in Detroit.
Yeah.
And the Who played, and somebody was passing around. I don't know what it was, but we adjusted it. And I've never been. That was the highest I ever been at that point in my life. But the Who, world class.
They are.
So
this one's a little bit different. World Health Organization.
A little bit different.
What's the significance of it? Well, look what happened when the FDA approved GW Pharma's CBD drug, where I believe that they stated that that's the one against, I believe, seizures. Forgive me, I'm doing too much stuff off memory. There's way too much information in this sector that keeps going on. I gotta start writing stuff down. But when that happened, though, there was a positive effect on that because it's the FDA taking a stance. The WHO, if they take a positive stance on cannabis, especially as a medicine, I think that is looked at favorably because now these different countries who are kind of on the fence about going medical, now like, well, if the WHO is saying this is okay, and my peers are saying it's okay, the North Americans and these other countries, Germany, UK, all that,
right?
If they're all coming online and the WHO comes on board for that, I think that's a positive effect. Absolutely. Will it immediately affect stock market? That's harder to say. Nothing's really affecting the stock market right now. It's just it's a poor time at the moment. Forgive me, I'm not going to try to say your name there, but Goal is your last name. Midas Letter, can you talk about block technologies? They have been downhill in terms of share price. I do not follow block that well. I'll be very honest. I'm not sure if you do.
You know what? When I couldn't understand it, and so I stayed away from it. And I know that there were a few companies that exploded, but soon thereafter came back down to earth.
Yeah.
And so it's been it's not been a good ride. I mean, if you're still in some of these issuers, I don't think that any are near their highs.
Yeah. Last question before we head to the market, because there's supposed to be a bell going on here any moment. There it is. We've reached it. But Wayland, what do you think the odds of a 3-to-1 split for Wayland? So I think we spoke about this before.
They're consolidating. They're consolidating.
Doing a reverse split. I can only imagine that they would do that because they've spoken about going on U.S. markets. So having
at a buck and a quarter, $1.30 divided by 3, you're looking at about a $4 number, right?
$3.90, $4. You have to be over $3 for I think 60 days to be on tier 2 or. I think tier 2 NASDAQ or something like that. And New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, they all have these different tiers you have to be on. But what is the probability of it? Well, if people, obviously when that news happened, they were down like 9% yesterday.
Did they say they were going to do it?
It's in their AGM circular.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's going to be voted on.
Yeah.
The probability, it all depends, right? I mean, when you see reverse splits or any split of any kind, I've never seen a positive share price effect that day. But if you know why it's happening and it's for a goal, and later on they can prove that goal is worth it for shareholder value, that's something you got to choose for yourself if that's a decision that you want to be making. But if it is to get on a U.S. exchange, the liquidity that it provides, there's a lot of good things there. At the end of the day, it just depends if enough investors believe that is the way to go. That's why you vote on these types of things. So. That's my opinion on it. I'm indifferent on it because I don't know enough about the company and why they're doing it. That's an internal thing.
It's hard to imagine. Depending on the sector, again, if they're all going in a direction, it's hard to see one breaking away from the pack unless something magnificent happens. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we go to the indices? How did they do today? If you want to go to the or just look at some of the charts.
Yeah. Well, we can go to the website and then put up. Go to the Midas Letter website and hit cannabis. Yeah. Well, I'm sort of really watching weed, the 3 or 4 or 5 big ones, and I don't like the way. Afria is getting dangerously close to being single digit. Yeah. ACB is breaking below that previous low level. It's interesting. It's interesting times here.
So the Midas Letter Canadian Cannabis Index is down 1.32%. I don't know if we can get my NDI.
Yeah, here we go. This is what we want to see.
There we go.
Yeah.
Is down 1.32%. I've never actually scrolled through these, so why don't we go back here?
Yeah, so there's
Let's see what we got here. We've got the cannabis composite down 7%, the small cap. It's a pretty big pullback in the small cap. The Canadian Venture Cannabis Index, that's down 8%.
Yeah.
And the CSC down 4%. So it was a red day all over, and there was an article actually today for, I think it was the Globe and Mail. They were talking about how the TSX Venture is in trouble.
Yeah.
Because there's this appetite or this loss of appetite for investing, and people need to understand. There's many different elements to the stock market. It's not just about cannabis, contrary to many believe. There's a lot more there, and people are losing it. They're losing the want to be in it.
To contrast what you were just saying about all the redness in the marijuana space, the S&P 500. Closed near its high after being down sharply this morning and then taking out all those losses, and now it's up 8 points in New York. So we got a stronger stock market.
Yeah.
But no not being pulled along yet by that development.
Well, we're still in tax loss season. You can do that up until I believe it's 2 or 3 closing days. They changed it recently for the year to make sure it's a tax
because
loss.
the settlement things changed, right? So now it's a 2-day settlement.
It changed to 2. I couldn't remember if it was 2 changed to 3, 3 changed to 2. But you've got that. You've got window dressing by the portfolio managers that we've spoken before, that they're trying to de-risk their funds so that they can be a better rating come January and beyond. You got people really waiting for a catalyst. It's tough to get to.
Maybe we put up my NDI for a minute because I want to just talk about this. I got a 1-month chart here of the S&P. Here we go. Anyway, back again. We've talked about this several times. The S&P is showing that it's trying to find some major support And even though this candle, it's green again, and it closed 8 points higher than yesterday, I think it's constructive. I think it's trying to find a major bottom. And if we get a major bottom, I think a lot of money is going to start rolling back into, these stocks like Amazon, Apple.
Yeah.
Canopy, that's a good. I think that's a good close for Canopy. Up, the big one being up on the day.
Well, even
CanTrust is up.
Well, even Aurora jumped up to 729 to hit the close.
So it closed above that.
It closed above 7.25, and also one of our viewers wanted to point out again, just like we had mentioned in our news from Liz West to start off the show, Aurora Cannabis is shipping medical cannabis to the Czech Republic. So
right.
They're adding another piece. And speaking of the Czech Republic, it's actually a great segue because we were speaking to someone earlier today, and we were talking with Deepak Anand, where Deepak is such a fantastic person because he knows so much about what's going on globally in these different countries.
Right.
So he was in the studio in person earlier today. Let's roll to him now and see about what's going on in the world of cannabis. And we'll go there now.
Let's do that.
And we're back in studio today with Deepak Anand, VP of Government Relations for CCI. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And the last time we spoke, it was just after legalization. And now we've had a good month and a half since then. What's been going on?
Yeah, lots. I mean, clearly you've seen supply issues across the country. We've seen AGLC in Alberta look at limiting sort of number of new stores that they're approving. You've seen PLD product shortages in the Alberta market. Quebec's seen the same thing. A lot of shortages in that market. The SQDC is now limiting hours that they're operating, so certainly supply crunch on the recreational side. Mm-hmm. But what we're also seeing is medical cannabis patients actually don't have enough product, and we've seen various licensed producers not have much inventory in terms of supplying medical patients. And then one of the other things we've also seen is a significant increase in the sort of a price on product with some LPs too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people were concerned that the demand wasn't going to be there, or that exactly what's happening now. We have this incredible supply crunch. But if you look at the different companies, like a lot of them, you see 2019 is going to be the year where a lot of their production is coming into production. Facilities are being finished. In your experience, do you think that's enough for 2019? Do you think we're still going to be still in a supply crunch moving forward?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, there's certainly going to be a lot of facilities coming online. I mean, the big unknown in my mind at this point is imports and sort of when that triggers in, and that's really going to speak to not just pricing, but also how much availability of product comes in. Now, keep in mind, imports can only be for medical purposes, so it's not going to affect the recreational market. But certainly it's going to have a factor to play in terms of the overall pricing and strategy they're in. But I certainly expect some of the companies that have sort of come out and said they've got these massive facilities coming online. I've seen a lot of work happening, and they will in fact come online. I think that will address the supply situation, but we'll still be in a shortage kind of pattern until at least for the next year.
Well, yeah, and look at, and we'll use this as a segue into the world. Look at even just the exporting opportunity for those companies who are GMP certified, who have the connections and affiliations in, it seems like almost the entire world now. It keeps growing, but at least a dozen different countries right now. And even as that supply comes on, when you can get a really good premium by exporting, and I'm an economist through and through. I love the fact that we're about to be exporting this product in such a massive quantity. It's great for our country. But even if you have all that product coming on, does it stay in Canada, or does it go abroad where you can possibly get a better margin for it?
The dominoes are falling, so as to say, and I mean, we literally almost wake up daily and see new countries passing legislation. Yesterday South Korea just announced they're going to be going through medical cannabis. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And here was a country that, when we legalized cannabis, said, they warned their students not to consume cannabis in Canada for recreational purposes because it would have significant impacts on them. And so the fact that they're now moving towards medical is going to be significant. And it goes back to speaking to what you were talking about, which is the real opportunities for licensed producers on a global scale now. It's it doesn't seem to be slowing down. In fact, it's expedited significantly. The UK just legalized. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of product going into the UK. So that South Korea is now on board. Czech Republic, we just saw Aurora make an announcement that they were going to be exporting product into the Czech Republic. which has had its cultivation program, but clearly they're having a number of issues. And as you correctly pointed out, Brandon, there's only a few companies in Canada that currently have GMP, and that's sort of the key to be able to export into a lot of these international markets that are set up for medical purposes.
Yeah, and that's something that we've been really watching in our community, but just in general as an investor. You want to find a company that has a lot of growth potential still, and a lot of people will look at dilution of these larger companies, or they'll look at they're growing too fast. There's all these different arguments out there, but at the end of the day, within the next 2 years, America will be legalized. I strongly believe that. That's a whole system still, but when that curtain comes down, these Canadian players, they need to be able to build to a point where they can actually compete with them. And not to mention, just in general, as not even thinking about the United States, as a Canadian company, the opportunity that's there to be the know-how for these countries, which I believe in just from the state of having proper cannabis, having proper knowledge as a medicine. I really love that side, but also taking the business side, there is an immense opportunity here, and it looks like they're really, especially the likes of Aurora, Wayland, Canopy, they're just spreading like crazy. I love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where IP comes into a big extent. I mean, we're having a lot of conversations around IP that licensed producers currently own, not just in Canada, but also internationally. I think you're right on the US part. We will see federal legalization, at least for medical purposes, very soon. I think it's definitely on the horizon. And that will have an impact on Canadian companies. We're seeing a lot of US companies currently interested in coming to Canada, but I think we may see some licensed producers going to the U.S. as well when that does happen, at least for medical purposes. And the cat's out of the bag to a certain extent. You've seen Canopy and Tilray obviously send product into the U.S. for R&D purposes, which just shows you sort of the medical application and impact that some of the Canadian licensed producers have on the global scale, including the United States, which is going to have a very tightly regulated sort of system. I was just at MJ Biz and one of the panels, and that's what I was saying is that most people in the U.S. I think think they want federal legalization, at least for medical. Yeah. But if you're in the business in the U.S., it's going to drastically, from a compliance perspective, change how you go about operating your business, because it's very, very different in the U.S. states that have legalized compared to the way we work on a federal basis with Health Canada.
It really is. So I was there as well in Vegas at the MJ Biz conference, and I was blown away by how many people were there, but also how many knowledgeable people were there. Each time I go to one of these conferences, it seems like it changes. I'm sure you can attest to all across the world. People Absolutely. Are getting much more sophisticated. Even the business people who, a couple of years ago, if you were a connoisseur of cannabis, you're like, oh, the suits are coming in, they're doing their homework, and they're very well educated now as well. But just seeing the products that are available there, the branding, the packaging, I'll say one thing, again, from an investor standpoint, because that's where I really stem my knowledge and my foundation around. Canada is in trouble if we do not revisit our marketing and our packaging laws, because the way the United States is doing it, they may be behind us in federal laws. They're well ahead of us in product innovation, packaging, and marketing.
Oh, absolutely. Leaps and bounds. I think people often ask me, where is the future of cannabis? And in many ways, at least on the CPG side and the recreational side, it's definitely California. Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the brands that are coming out of there. It's phenomenal what they're doing. And you're right. I mean, MJ Biz showcased that, we're seeing a lot of global players, actually, people that are not from the US or Canada that are involved in cannabis, from Israel to, Colombia, Jamaica, South Africa, Cyprus. There's a whole bunch of countries where we're seeing people start to look at IP and start to look at all of this and really come online. So you're right, there is going to be very soon a lot of competition for Canadian licensed producers on the international scale. And you're right, we need to start looking at this more from an industry perspective and getting ahead of some of these marketing and other regulations that will come in the way of licensed producers really scaling internationally.
Yeah, 100% it will. And don't get me wrong, I understand where they came from. This is a sweeping legislation. You had to give a little to make sure that the bill went through. But when you really look at it, the only thing, in my personal opinion, that these packaging and the way we're doing our marketing, the only thing that helps is for the gray market to continue to thrive, where you can get on an app right now in Toronto and have cannabis sent to you from anywhere. It's not an LP. And that's still thriving. We really need to get a hold of it. But in general, though, it's been really exciting seeing this come to fruition from the last 5 years. I've been paying attention to this, where people used to laugh at the fact of a legal cannabis, economy and having that available, to now countries you would never believe, you would bet against them legalizing, like South Korea, are now coming through because they see the medical aspect of it. But I think they're also kind of seeing, why are we policing this still? It's kind of foolish.
Absolutely. I think as Canadians, we're now known, at least when I travel internationally, it's very much on cannabis policy, and we're known for our cannabis policy. But we need to make sure that we keep ahead of this and make sure that we are one step ahead of this from an industry perspective, because very quickly we could start lagging the world. And there are a number of things that we will fall behind on if we don't sort of change some of the legislation on packaging. Branding is one of them. But even edibles, what is that legislation going to look like? Is that going to allow us to be the California of the world, really, in many cases? Are we going to be able to compete on that stage? Because the second that U.S. sort of legalizes for recreational purposes, it's going to be very challenging for Canadian licensed producers to compete if we are continually subject to these restrictions.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe, and in no way do I think that the people who are involved in Health Canada, all that, are not intelligent. They see this, they understand that, but it's a process. You don't just change cannabis legalities after, 100 years or so of being illegal. So it is a process. I just hope they continue to get it right. But really quickly, on a sense of recreation, a lot of people are curious about Ontario. Coming up April 1st, the legislation was now, well, for the most part, has come out, and there's an interesting clause in there that I was reading up on, where I forget the exact wording of it, but it's a legal term, where essentially, as an operator, you're allowed having 75 retail stores. As an LP, you're only allowed having one, and I believe you're only allowed having 9.99% ownership of a retail store. But from the sounds of the wording, it is completely open for franchising. Are you able to talk about that little piece of worry where it almost seems like an Aurora or somebody can have a franchise and have 74 stores as a franchise, franchising them out. Is that true?
Well, there's certainly some franchising ability available there, and there are clauses. I mean, what's the unknown at this point is how far is the AGCO going to go in terms of financial due diligence to be able to look at what the ownership is and who truly benefits from this and what are they going to do on this. And they had a webinar today that was extremely informative in terms of helping prospective applicants for retail stores understand the landscape. And we've posed this question to them on franchising, and I look forward to sort of working with them to fully understand how that might impact it. But you're right, I think there seems to be some avenues there to get through the franchising way.
Yeah, I wish I didn't have it written down, but there's a certain word, it was like 3 words in there, and some smart lawyer picked up and said, wait a second. So you're telling me I can franchise? And everyone's like, what do you mean you can franchise?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's always a curveball. Well, hey, we always appreciate you coming on the show. What does CCI have going for the remainder of the year and going to next year, though? Plug for everything that you guys are doing.
Yeah,
what are you excited about?
We've been extremely busy on the international stage. We're now in 16 countries and growing literally daily. I'm sure we'll be talking to South Korea soon. We're doing a lot on the international side. As much as we are helping Canadian companies get licensed for cultivation and production and manufacturing on the Health Canada side, we're also helping a lot of retail sort of businesses set up and get up and running. But really, we're doing and leading international policy in many ways. We're setting up offices all over the globe and certainly starting with Europe. So we're quite busy internationally. It's great to be able to carry sort of the Canadian best practices in terms of regulations and help international governments kind of look at what they need to do from a policy perspective so they can get up and running very quickly.
Yeah, and I appreciate it personally. Again, going back to that investor side of me, because it's hard to disseminate all the information. There's a lot of jargon out there. There's a lot of hearsay. So being able to see a company like yourself and just knowing what's going on in the world and keeping on track and knowing that if you guys are covering somebody, you've done your due diligence on them and you understand that those people are walking the proper walk opposed to what everyone else is doing. So it really does help investors, but as a country and that, just throughout the world, I appreciate the work you guys are doing because it's I love this. I love seeing this happen. I've been a cannabis enthusiast for many, many years. To see it come to fruition now is great, but there's a lot more still to go.
Indeed, very exciting.
Absolutely. Well, again, I appreciate you having on the show. Always a pleasure, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic guy. Fantastic interview. That guy knows his stuff when it comes to cannabis across the world.
Where does this guy live? Is he here from Toronto?
I believe he's based out of BC.
Okay.
I could stand corrected though, but I think he's based actually out of Germany, South Korea, Czech Republic, Russia. He's
right.
constantly
like he's everywhere.
He's at a different conference.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though. It is true. We're turning a corner We are truly, truly seeing this cannabis legalization really catch on worldwide. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Here's a question about Afria. Ivan Black is saying it's continuing to. I got the chart up here on the. I got a 1-year chart up, and I think we're going to use my magic pen.
The magic pen.
The magic pen. And there we go. So look. So we had a bottom, and again, to me it looks like a major double top, but it's maybe a bit premature to say that. But we had a good bounce there. Another bounce, very almost identical price. Then the Constellation, and we had this major ascent. So the shorts got destroyed there, and then we rolled over, and now we're back to what I think the low today. We're right around the lows. I think it closed around 10.25. Something like that. Yeah. 10.29, down 46 cents.
Yeah,
down 4%.
It's interesting to see as well, because I mean, you could almost draw a straight line across there and see. I think it's 952
there
roughly,
we go, right there.
And it goes right across, but it's below where they are right now. But you've been seeing this little bit of a drop off. But look at the volume drop off as well. Usually, when you're really about to you see something really negative, usually it's on large volume. Large volume always shows a certain move. And it's little volume, so it's a slow bleed. I think it's just people just pulling money out. It's nothing crazy, nothing big just happened, but they're.
I think
selling
you know, maybe you know, Dan would have a different view, but if this thing breaks on like if it gets below that line and closes below it, you know, you got to be careful.
Yeah,
you got to be careful. Like if you start breaking support, I mean, it broke support here, broke support there.
Yeah, it's below all of its.
Probably it looks
all
like
of its moving averages right now. It's below it. So, you know, it's sort of thing. I don't think anything happened in the last day or two to push this off, but it's you know, it's getting harder as well with so many different cannabis companies out there.
Yeah,
it's harder sometimes to see these signs because you'll miss news very easily with how many news releases come out in a given day. So. It's one of those things, my man.
All right, I'm looking. Tomorrow we're gonna have Terry Donnelly. Oh. And he's got that beer. I got to tell you that beer
was good.
That beer is very tasty. They've won a lot of awards, and they win awards for their wine as well.
Yeah, and I didn't know who you were saying at first until because you did the interview with them today.
Yeah,
I'm picky when it comes to my beer. Like I don't drink beer too often, but I like good beer. It's a non-alcoholic beer, and it's got 70 calories, and they're going to be infusing it with cannabis products. But you taste it. It's actually.
I know. I
was expecting to taste something terrible, and it did not.
You know what? I would buy that. I'm going to buy some of that product because then I can say I actually went out and bought some of that product. I'm going to help that
tomorrow,
company generate some more sales.
We are here. I am here 1 to 3 for FTMIG Live. So we'll be here 1 to 3 tomorrow. You'll be back at 3 o'clock, and you're going to be here with Steve Meisner.
Yeah, Steve is
hosting.
He's been on the you know, he's co-hosted before. He's a former fund manager. He's got all kinds of designations. He's a very knowledgeable guy and a real interesting perspective on macro events.
Yeah, just like I love
hearing
right, people
very
like,
right wing. Just say.
Oh, very much.
That's okay.
But just like I love hearing people like Charter Dan, you know, go with something he's passionate about and very knowledgeable about.
Yeah.
I love listening to people like Steven because he's been around for a long time. He really understands capital markets. And when you listen to him, you know you're getting a lot of wealth of knowledge as you're talking to him. So I enjoy looking through that. I'm excited to tune in on that one. I get to take the other seat. I get to be the spectator.
Yeah.
And watch you to do some magic tomorrow.
Very good. Very good. So, yeah, it's amazing how quickly time flies when you're having fun.
Yes, I know. It's almost already 4:30. We
is
just
it
had
almost
so much fun that
is
hour and a half is
almost
gone.
time to go get some real beer?
Some real beer, yeah. Get some wine. You know, get to relax.
That was
enjoy.
good beer. That was a good. And you had the Pilsner. I had the lager.
I had the Pilsner, exactly. Well, hey. Well, why don't we call it a day? We went through a lot of different things. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Really active chat room today, so appreciate that. continue your conversations going and questions, because we're looking for the questions throughout the day. Our teams will look through them, and hopefully we'll get to answer as many of them as we can throughout the show.
Very good.
I'll see you back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. You'll see Ed tomorrow at 3 p.m. Have a good day, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Bye. Looks like